Hi, and welcome to my sewing room. My name's Leah, and I'm on week 28 of my UFO challenge, where I've challenged myself to sew at least 15 minutes a day on my UFOs. This week I've continued to chip away at my Pythagoras Lute project. This is one of those slow and steady builds, with progress one triangle at a time. This week started out pretty good, but about halfway through I kind of went a little downhill. Let me explain what happened. On day 1, I trimmed all the shapes for my pink and my green units, which felt like a really good jump start. On days 2 and 3, I moved on to the purple and green units with some slow but steady progress, so I was feeling pretty good. And before I go any further, I want to give a quick shout out to Anna. She had asked how I get my pieces straight, so let me show you how I do that real quick. It's usually the odd angles that give me the most trouble. To help make sure I cover the whole shape, I lay my fabric down along the seam that I plan to sew next. Then I fold the paper back over on top of the fabric, and I make sure that that piece that I'm getting ready to sew covers all the fabric. If there's still fabric sticking out from the shape that I just folded over, then I know I have enough and that it's in the right place. After doing this method several times, I've also learned that even if there's just a tiny bit sticking out, that can get a little off. So I make sure there's a good chunk of fabric still showing before I flip everything over and sew it down. And sometimes if the piece is big enough, I'll pin it before I flip it over to help make sure things don't shift. And that little quick fold over every time before I sew has really eliminated lots of headaches of unstitching those little tiny seams that you use with paper piecing. I have a few more tips that I've put together, and I'm working on putting that into a video, and I'm hoping to have it done by this Saturday. So if you really love paper piecing, come back this weekend and check that out. And now let's get back to what happened for the rest of the week. So day 2 and 3 went pretty smooth, but on day 4, my machine broke. I just had it serviced last month to fix the thread cutter, and now the presser foot won't go down, and it won't sew anything at all. I spent hours trying to troubleshoot it. I rethreaded the top, I rethreaded the bottom, I took out the whole bobbin case, cleaned it out, make sure there's nothing stuck in there. I checked the wires on the foot pedal to make sure there was no glitches or things not plugged in right. I turned it on, I turned it off. The last thing I wanted to do was take off the side panel and see if there was anything stuck inside those little mechanisms on the side. But I could not find the screwdriver that fit this shape of the screw on the side of my machine. I tore my sewing room apart. I emptied out my entire sewing desk drawer and I put it in a bin, and I went through everything one by one to see if I could find that screwdriver, but it is nowhere to be found. And I was running out of time. I spent most of the day trying to fix this machine, and I didn't get any sewing done on any project. On day 5, I didn't have time to look for that screwdriver anymore. I had 2 quilts that I needed to get done for the Island Batik catalog, and they needed to be done right away. And I had missed a whole day of sewing on Saturday, so that put me behind. I had set up my backup sewing machine so I could finish those 2 projects. But it's an older Bernina and it hadn't been plugged in for a while, so it didn't start up right away. It needed a few hours to recharge. It's an older Bernina, and I sewed on this one for a good 15 years. I even quilted king-size quilts on this little machine. I love this machine. I haven't wanted to get rid of it, but it's been sitting to the side, and it's a good thing because now I can use it as a backup machine. I should just keep it on the side desk all the time and keep it plugged in. That way it's ready to go if I ever need it. Plus, it's probably good for it to sew every now and then, so the gears don't get all stuck up on the inside. So when my little Bernina was ready to go, the only thing I worked on were those 2 catalog quilts. Since I was already behind, I spent every single minute I had on those 2 quilts, and I didn't get any UFO sewing done for the rest of the week. Saving my deadline projects for the last minute is not usually how I like to work, but with the extra obstacles thrown at me the past couple months, I found that deadline creeping up faster and faster, and I didn't have as much time in the sewing room as I had wanted. And that brought me to the point where I was trying to cram in as much sewing as I could in 2 days. And having my main sewing machine break in those 2 days was definitely not helping anything. The sewing machine break-in and this deadline coming up really had me frazzled. But I got my projects done. And it reminded me that I've really been enjoying these 15-minute sessions where I work on my older projects. And sometimes those 15 minutes turn into just a little bit longer. But I really like being able to carve out just that time for my projects, even in between the deadline projects that I'm working on. So I'm definitely not going to let the craziness of last week affect my UFO challenge going forward. So that's it for this week's update. I had a big bump in the road that halted all my UFO progress. That bump's been cleared out of the way and I'm ready to move forward. So next week, I'm planning to finish up those purple and green units, and maybe I can figure out what's wrong with my main machine on my own. That way I can save myself an expensive trip back to the quilt shop to get it fixed. Hopefully you had some time to sew this week without too many road bumps. If so, let me know what you're working on in the comments below. It would be nice to hear that somebody else had some good sewing time this week. Thanks so much for stopping by, and until next time, happy sewing.